Okay, so for a tiny bit of background, I used to work at this drive-up coffee shop that sells coffee and snacks like bagels and muffins, etc. I live in a relatively small town, 10 to 15,000 people, and I had never had anything like this happen before, so I was pretty shaken up. Alrighty, so it was Sunday night, and I was closing all by myself for the first time ever, being a new hire. And it was getting kind of late, and virtually no one was coming through, so I was just doing some closing activities like sweeping and mopping, etc. This is important because we store the mop and broom in a separate closet that can only be accessed by going outside and unlocking the room with a key. So I had the employee entrance door unlocked since I was going in and out. It started to get dark, and I'm due to leave in about an hour when this old Ford drives up. The driver was an older man, maybe 40 or so. I wasn't too fazed by it though, because a lot of people work on oil rigs in my town, and if they are on a night shift, they'll stop for a pick-me-up before making the 3-hour drive out to the rigs. I open the window, ask him what he'd like to order, etc. This is where it gets weird. He didn't order any coffee or food. No. He asked me,
"Are you working alone?"
I most certainly was working alone, and even both of my managers were no longer in the neighboring pawn shop that they also own, and I just feel my blood run cold. Thankfully, I'm smart enough to lie and respond with, "Oh no, my coworker will be back in a second, and my manager is coming here in about 5 minutes. He needs to take inventory." At this point, the man looks past me into the shop, directly at the cracked door behind me, and gives me this really creepy smile before pulling forward and signaling to turn around on a road that goes right next to the open door. As soon as he could no longer see me, I jump over, slam the door shut, and lock the doorknob and deadbolt. I was worried to leave the building that night because I didn't want to walk across the parking lot to my car. I thought he might be lingering around the area, waiting for me to get off work. I'm really glad that I never told him I was working by myself. That was the creepiest encounter I've ever had at work. This is an experience I had when I was 16, during the summer of 1995. I was a junior in high school. I was a theater nerd, and I hung out with my 2 besties, Stella and Chris, a lot. Chris was short for Chrissy. At night, we usually picked up a few friends, bought beer and smokes at the local liquor store with one of our fake IDs, and then headed up to the reservoir or a local parking lot to enjoy our illicitly obtained goods. This particular Friday night, I was driving my dad's 1976 Mercedes 450 SL. I was buying it from him with payments over time. It was in decent shape and ran strong, but was 19 years old, so it had a few minor issues. One was that the passenger side door could only be rarely locked automatically using the lock from the driver's side, relevant later. I picked up Stella, Chrissy, and Ted around 8 p.m. We were feeling good and extra happy because it was Friday. Ted had to go in the front seat because he was 6'1", and the back seat would barely allow 2 small people, Stella and Chris, to sit there. We drove to our favorite liquor store just down the road from the reservoir, and Ted and Stella got out to get ciggies and beer, while Chris and I stayed in the car chatting. About a minute after our friends walked into the liquor store, an old Chevy van pulled up about 6 feet behind me, blocking me in. At first, I thought it was just a drunk townie being dumb. Then, a thin, pale woman with shoulder-length brown hair came around to my passenger side window and tried to start up a conversation with me and Chris. The woman's eyes were dilated, and she said something about how she and her friends were amateur movie makers, and she was looking to cast us in their next gig. Chris and I exchanged a look, and we were both on the same page of WTF is this woman talking about. I had a bad feeling and a very strong sense that the woman was going to try to get into my car, so I subtly started hitting the lock button, hoping that it would take. The woman was just babbling at this point, and she put her hand on my passenger side door handle, but literally the second before she tried opening the door, my sweet little Mercedes freaking finally obeyed my frantic tapping and locked the door with a loud click. The woman looked confused for a second. She tried the handle again, but my car was locked. Now I was scared and pissed. I knew the curb weight of a 76 450 SL was about 4K. The Chevy van behind me may have been blocking me and had curb weight up on me, but it was top heavy. I bet I could do a lot of damage to it if I slammed into it with my foot on the floor, especially if I did so repeatedly. So I said, very loudly, "Lady, take your hands off my fucking car. Step the fuck away. You go tell your friends that they need to move their fucking van now because I'm going to floor it in reverse and tear into your shit van like it's a piece of tinfoil." I turned my keys and revved my engine. It purred like the sweet little gas-sucking powerhouse it was, and my car swayed back and forth with each rev. I was not bluffing, and I think the woman saw it. The woman's eyes got wide, and she ran back to the van, screaming, "Go, go, move!" As she was running back to the van, I saw a thin dude with long stringy hair running out of the liquor store towards the van too. He jumped in the back and the van peeled out, leaving a shower of gravel and gray exhaust in its wake. About 10 seconds later, my friends Ted and Stella came walking out of the liquor store. My adrenaline was super flowing, and I was relieved to see them. Chris and I told them what happened, and they shared their experience. They said the guy who went into the liquor store had just walked up past them and started rambling about some random weird Jesus and Bible stuff to the clerk. He also said something to my friends about them looking open-minded and gave Stella major creep vibes when he looked her over. The guy at the counter had just listened for a few minutes while my friends waited patiently to buy smokes. Then the guy heard the revving and screaming and bolted out the door. The clerk asked my friends if the man was with them, and they said heck no. He said he thought that they were all together, or he would have told the guy to leave because he sounded crazy. So my friends bought the beer and smokes and walked out. We all thought that this was pretty weird shit. To this day, I am so grateful my door locked. Whatever that woman and her friends wanted, it wasn't good. I was living in Tampa, Florida in 2018, right when there was a serial killer announcement. The news reported they caught the guy a few weeks later, but to this day, my gut still tells me they got the wrong guy. So, here's my story. It was April 20th, 2018, so you know what I was doing, and a lot of it. But keep in mind, at this point in my life, I was a constant stoner for 7 years. Weed didn't affect me in the same way. My boyfriend at the time and I agreed to start the night at different friends' houses, since his friends didn't smoke and mine did, topped with the fact that I was about to move to a different state, and it would be the last time I would see my friends for a while. So around 10 to 11 p.m., I would take an Uber to get to his friend's house. The night was highly normal. up until this point. So I order the Uber, and the Uber driver drops off my friends at their houses along the way. So being the person I am, I strike up a conversation for the 30-minute ride. How are you doing? Are you seeing a lot of high people tonight? My normal questions. I hate silence, and this is who I am as a person. After we get through some small talk, he starts asking where I'm going, and I explain everything above. He asks why I'm not partying with my boyfriend at the time, and my dumbass explains I'm not sure if we're going to make it with the move, and he doesn't love me anymore. Then he starts asking if my mom knows where I am, if people know I'm coming, and when does my friends we just dropped off expect me home? Do I live with them? And thankfully, I caught on that these were weird questions to ask someone traveling alone. So I started lying, saying my mom is expecting me to call as soon as I arrive, and how I was getting texts in the group chat to tell them when I was at the other party, safe. Once we arrived, of course, like the fucking horror movie this night was feeling like, the other friend's house was in the woods on the edge of Tampa, and my high ass was in overdrive trying to figure out how to get out of this one. We finally can see my friend's house and a little bonfire about 300 feet away when he stops and says this is where he'll drop me off. I ran out of that car ASAP, and he hightailed it out right as I closed the door. Thank God I didn't leave anything in the Uber. I know it's not the craziest encounter, but my gut is rarely wrong about these things. I didn't think about this again until I saw the news when they announced that they caught the guy. I don't know. I hope this was worth being late to work to type out.